Mafia boss notices his maid hiding bruises. The moment her sleeve slipped while pouring his coffee, the room froze. Purple bruises peeked through her trembling arm, and when he asked what happened, she whispered, "I fell." But he saw it. The fear, the pain, the lie. And right there, behind that cold stare and sharp suit, something dark snapped inside him. Because no one hurts what belongs under his roof. What she didn't know is that she just became his to protect. And this story, it's about to get dangerously personal. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me what time it is and where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button because what's coming next will make your heart race. Dante Castellano didn't believe in coincidences. At exactly 6:47 a.m., he sat in his private office overlooking the Chicago skyline, reviewing financial reports that would make most people's eyes glaze over. But Dante wasn't most people. He was a man who noticed everything. The tremor in someone's voice during negotiations, the half-second pause before a handshake, the way people's pupils dilated when they lied. So when Isabella Rivera walked into his office carrying his morning espresso, he noticed immediately that her sleeve was pulled down too far. Not just down, deliberately stretched over her knuckles, clutched in her fist like she was trying to hold something together or hide something terrible. "Good morning, Mr. Castellano," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It always was. In the 3 months she'd worked here, he'd never heard her speak louder than a normal conversation. "Morning, Isabella." He watched her approach his desk, her movements careful and practiced. She set the porcelain cup down with both hands, and that's when it happened. The sleeve slipped. Just for a second, maybe two, but it was enough. Dark purple bruises wrapped around her wrist like ugly chains. Some were fresh, deep purple and angry. Others were fading to that sickly yellow-green color that meant they were days old. His eyes caught them before she yanked her sleeve back down, and he saw her freeze. She knew he'd seen. "Isabella," he said calmly, setting down his pen. "Sit. I should get back to. Sit." It wasn't loud. Dante never needed to be loud. But something in his tone made people obey. She lowered herself into the leather chair across from his desk, looking like she wanted to disappear into it completely. Her hands were shaking. "What happened to your wrist?" "Nothing, sir. I'm just clumsy." She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "I bumped it on the cabinet door yesterday while cleaning." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with the intensity of a predator analyzing prey. Isabella was 28 according to her employment file. Petite, with dark hair usually tied back in a neat bun, and brown eyes that rarely made direct contact. She was thorough, quiet, never asked questions. Those were the qualities his head housekeeper, Catherine Walsh, had praised when recommending her. But Catherine hadn't mentioned the fear. Because that's what Dante saw now, not embarrassment about being clumsy. Fear. Raw, primal, suffocating fear. "Both wrists?" he asked gently, noticing how she unconsciously rubbed her other arm. Isabella's face went pale. "Yes, I'm very clumsy." "Show me." "Mr. Castellano, really, I'm fine." "Isabella." He kept his voice soft, but firm. "Show me." Her hands trembled violently as she slowly pulled back both sleeves. The bruises were identical on both wrists, finger-shaped marks. Someone had grabbed her. Hard. Recently. With enough force to leave deep tissue damage. Dante felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. He'd built an empire in Chicago's shadows. He'd done things that kept him awake some nights, made decisions that crossed lines most people couldn't imagine. But he had rules. Sacred, unbreakable rules. And one of those rules was crystal clear. You didn't hurt people who couldn't fight back. Someone had hurt Isabella. Someone had grabbed this woman hard enough to leave marks that looked days old, and she was terrified enough to lie about it. Who did this? His voice was deadly quiet. "Nobody. I told you Isabella." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to understand something. You work in my house. Under my roof. That means you're under my protection. Do you understand what that means?" She looked at him with those frightened eyes, and for a moment he thought she might tell him. Her lips parted slightly, and he could see her weighing options in her head, calculating risks, measuring consequences. Then she stood up abruptly. "I really should get back to work. The breakfast dishes." "Isabella." But she was already backing toward the door, panic overriding everything else. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Castellano. I promise I'll be more careful. And then she was gone, practically fleeing from his office like a rabbit escaping a wolf. Dante sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the door she'd closed behind her. Then he picked up his phone and called the one person in this house he trusted as much as himself. Catherine. My office. Now. 3 minutes later, his head housekeeper appeared. Catherine Walsh had worked for the Castellano family for 30 years. She was 62, sharp as a razor, and one of the few people who wasn't afraid to tell Dante when he was being an idiot. You bellowed? She said dryly, closing the door. Isabella. Tell me about her. Catherine's expression shifted immediately to concern. What happened? She's hurt. Bruises on both wrists. Finger marks. She's terrified, and she's lying about it. Jesus Christ. Catherine sank into the chair Isabella had just vacated. I didn't know. I swear, Dante, I didn't know. What do you know about her personal life? Not much. She keeps to herself. I know she was married, but divorced now. She needed work badly when she applied here. I could tell. Good references from her previous employer, a family in the suburbs. They moved to California, and she couldn't go with them. Dante drummed his fingers on the desk, his mind already racing through possibilities. Why did she need work badly? Catherine shrugged. Divorce is expensive. She mentioned once that she was staying with her sister temporarily, trying to get back on her feet. Find out where she goes after work, Dante said, his voice taking on that edge that made people move fast. Don't follow her yourself. Have Victor do it. Discreet. I want to know where she lives, who she talks to, and if anyone's bothering her. You think it's the ex-husband? I think someone grabbed her hard enough to leave bruises that look like they hurt just to exist, Dante said coldly. And she's too scared to report it. That tells me everything I need to know. Catherine nodded slowly. She'd seen this side of Dante before, the protective, almost paternal instinct that kicked in when someone under his care was threatened. For all his criminal dealings, Dante Castellano had a code. An ironclad, unbreakable code. I'll talk to her, Catherine offered. Maybe she'll open up to another woman. Do that. But carefully. She's already spooked. After Catherine left, Dante turned back to his computer, but the financial reports held no interest now. His mind was elsewhere, running through scenarios, calculating angles, preparing for war. Somewhere in Chicago, someone had hurt Isabella, had grabbed her, scared her, made her afraid to ask for help. And that person had just made the biggest mistake of their life. Because Isabella Rivera worked in Dante Castellano's house. She was under his protection, whether she understood what that meant or not. And Dante Castellano always protected what was his. He picked up his phone again, this time calling his head of security. Victor, I need you to run a background check. Quietly. Isabella Rivera, employed here as housekeeper. I want everything. Where she lived, who she was married to, any police reports, restraining orders, anything that might explain why she's terrified. How fast do you need it? Victor's voice was all business. Dante looked at the closed door, remembering the fear in Isabella's eyes, the way her hands had shaken, the bruises that wrapped around her wrists like shackles. Yesterday, he said coldly, and ended the call. Outside his window, the sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, peaceful, deceptive. Inside Dante's chest, something darker was rising, a cold, calculated fury that would not rest until Isabella's tormentor understood what happened when you hurt someone under Dante Castellano's protection. Victor Santos had been Dante's head of security for 14 years. He'd tracked down thieves, eliminated threats, and once identified a traitor before the man could destroy everything. But investigating a terrified maid? That was new territory. Still, when Dante Castellano gave an order with that tone in his voice, you moved fast and asked questions never. By noon, Victor was knocking on Dante's office door with a thick folder in hand, his expression grim as death. That was fast, Dante said, gesturing him inside. It wasn't hard. Victor dropped the folder on the desk like it contained a bomb. You're not going to like any of this. Dante opened it. Inside was a photograph of a man in a Chicago Police Department uniform, broad-shouldered, cold blue eyes, and a smile that never reached them. The kind of smile predators wore when they thought they'd won. Officer Marcus Kane, Victor said, his voice tight with disgust. Married Isabella Rivera 6 years ago. Divorced finalized 9 months back. He's stationed at the 12th District. Works patrol, but his connections run deep. His uncle is Deputy Chief Richard Kane. Dante's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Keep going. 3 domestic disturbance calls to their old address over 2 years. Each time, Isabella refused to press charges. Neighbors reported hearing screaming, things breaking, her begging him to stop. Victor pulled out another document. Then she filed for divorce and got a restraining order, which expired 4 weeks ago. Why didn't she renew it? She tried. Victor's expression darkened. Kane showed up to court with an expensive lawyer, probably paid for by Uncle Richard. They argued she had no new evidence of harassment. Judge denied the extension. Dante felt rage building in his chest like a storm gathering strength. So she's legally unprotected. Completely. And boss, there's more. Victor pulled out his phone, showing Dante surveillance photos he'd pulled from social media. Kane's tight with at least 15 cops in his district. If Isabella tried to report him now, they'd bury it. Blue wall of silence. Where does she live? Apartment in Pilsen. Sharing with her sister, Rosa. Building has 0 security. Isabella takes the bus to and from work every day. Victor paused, his voice dropping. You want me to put surveillance on her? Immediately. I want cameras on that bus stop. I want to know if Kane goes anywhere near her. Dante's voice was ice cold. And pull our security footage from the past month. If he's been following her here, I want to know. Already did. Victor pulled up footage on his phone. Look at this. From 6 days ago. The video showed Isabella leaving through the side gate at 6:47 p.m. She looked around nervously before heading toward the bus stop, her purse clutched tight to her chest like a shield. 30 seconds later, a dark sedan rolled slowly past. Kane behind the wheel. Even though the angle wasn't perfect, his face partially visible. He's hunting her, Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. Gets worse. Yesterday, same time. Victor showed another clip. This time the car stopped at the bus stop, where Isabella waited. She saw it, and her entire body language changed, shoulders hunched, head down, frozen in terror. The car sat there for 3 agonizing minutes, just idling, watching, reminding her he knew where she worked, when she left, that he could reach her anytime. Then it drove away. He's not touching her, Victor explained. He's smart. Just watching, intimidating, making sure she knows he's always there. It's psychological torture. It's terrorism, Dante corrected coldly. He's a predator playing with his prey. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her face pale. I talked to her. Or tried to. She moved into the room, closing the door behind her. She's terrified, Dante. I brought her tea, sat with her in the kitchen, told her this was a safe place. She thanked me, said she was fine. Then her hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the cup. Did she say anything useful? She mentioned trouble sleeping. Keeps hearing noises outside her apartment at night. Tried to laugh it off, said the neighborhood's just loud. Catherine's voice was heavy with frustration. But that girl is being stalked, and she knows it. Dante stood abruptly, moving to the window. Chicago sprawled below him. His city, his territory, his domain. And somewhere in those streets, a corrupt cop thought he could terrorize a woman with impunity. Marcus Kane had just made a fatal miscalculation. Here's what's going to happen, Dante said, turning back to face them. His voice was calm, but both Victor and Catherine recognized the tone. It was the voice Dante used when he decided someone's fate. Victor, I want everything on Kane. Where he lives, where he drinks, who his friends are, what time he takes his morning coffee. I want his schedule, his habits, every secret he's ever tried to hide. His uncle's a deputy chief, Victor reminded him carefully. If we move against a cop, I know what he is. Dante's eyes were chips of black ice. Which is why we're going to be very, very careful. We're not going to touch him. Not yet. Then what are we doing? Catherine asked. We're watching. We're documenting. We're building a case. Dante moved back to his desk, his mind already 10 steps ahead. Kane thinks he's untouchable because of that badge. He thinks Isabella is alone. He's wrong on both counts. Victor pulled out his tablet, already taking notes. You want surveillance on Kane too? Everything. I want to know every person he meets, every place he goes, every crime he commits while wearing that uniform. Dante's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Marcus Kane is about to learn that badges don't stop consequences. They just delay them. What about Isabella? Catherine asked. What do we tell her? Nothing. Not yet. Dante sat down, his expression softening slightly. If we tell her we're watching Kane, she'll panic. Might do something unpredictable. Right now, she needs to act normal, keep coming to work, maintain her routine. She's suffering, Catherine protested. I know. Dante's voice was gentler now. But if we move too fast, we could make things worse. Kane's not stupid. He's staying just inside the law. We need him to make a mistake. A big one. The kind that even his uncle can't cover up. After they left, Dante sat alone with Kane's file spread across his desk. He studied the man's face. The cold eyes, the predatory smile. The uniform that should have represented protection but was really just camouflage for a monster. Marcus Kane thought he could hurt someone in Dante's house without consequences. Thought that badge made him immune. Thought Isabella was too scared and too alone to fight back. He was about to discover how wrong he was. Dante picked up his phone and made one more call. I need to speak with someone at the FBI. Someone who handles corrupt cops. Someone who can't be bought. Because Dante Castellano had learned long ago that the best way to destroy an enemy wasn't always direct violence. Sometimes, the most devastating weapon was exposure. You stripped away their armor, removed their protection, and let the system they'd corrupted turn against them. Marcus Kane wore a badge. But soon, very soon, that badge would become the chain that dragged him down. Dante looked at Isabella's employee photo, her nervous smile, her kind eyes, the hope she was trying so hard to maintain despite everything. You're not alone anymore, he said quietly to the photograph. Not anymore. The war had truly begun, and Marcus Kane had no idea the storm that was coming for him. 72 hours. That's all it took for Dante's operation to dismantle Marcus Kane's entire world. Victor worked like a machine, digging through Kane's life with surgical precision, finding rot everywhere he looked. Got him, Victor announced, bursting into Dante's office at midnight on the third day. He spread documents across the desk like evidence at a crime scene. Boss, this guy's dirty as hell. Dante leaned forward, eyes scanning the papers with predatory focus. Talk to me. Kane's official salary is $63,000 a year. But look at these bank deposits. Victor highlighted several entries. Cash. $2,000 here, $3,000 there. $47,000 in unexplained deposits over 18 months. Where's it coming from? Shakedowns. Traffic stops in wealthy neighborhoods. He finds something, drugs, open container, whatever, then offers to make it disappear for cash. Victor pulled out photographs. And it gets better. See this guy? The photo showed Kane at a bar with a man Dante recognized immediately. Tommy Rizzo, a mid-level criminal who ran protection rackets on the South Side. Kane tips Rizzo off about raids. Victor continued, barely containing his excitement. Helps him move product when heat's coming. In exchange, Rizzo pays him cash and provides muscle when Kane needs it. So our cop is a criminal. Dante's voice was ice. What else? Pattern of violence. Victor laid out more documents. 2 years ago, Kane arrested a guy named Carlos Mendoza for drug possession. Mendoza claimed Kane planted the drugs. Nobody believed him. He got 5 years. But here's the thing. Mendoza's girlfriend filed a complaint saying Kane harassed her during the arrest, grabbed her inappropriately. The complaint went to Internal Affairs. Let me guess, Dante said. It disappeared. Investigated by Kane's uncle's best friend, Lieutenant Paul Brennan. Complaint deemed unfounded. Case closed. Victor pulled up a diagram on his tablet showing connections between officers. Kane sits at the center of a network. 8 cops who all protect each other. Every single one has complaints that mysteriously vanished. Dante absorbed this, his mind calculating angles and vulnerabilities. Financial records. Corrupt associates. A pattern of covered-up complaints. It's good, but it's not enough. His uncle can still make this go away. That's why I saved the best for last. Victor's grin was vicious. Kane's partner, Officer Ryan Webb, has a gambling problem. Owes money to 3 different bookies. I talked to one. Off the record. And Webb's been bragging about how he and Kane are untouchable because of Uncle Richard. Webb's a weak link. The weakest. One push and he'll crack like glass. Dante stood, pacing to the window. Below, Chicago glittered in the darkness, unaware of the war being waged in its shadows. Here's what we do. Anonymous tip to Internal Affairs about Webb's gambling debts. Include bank records showing deposits matching exactly the amounts from traffic stops Kane made. Make it impossible for them to ignore. They'll bring Webb in for questioning, Victor said, following the logic. And when they do, Webb will panic. He'll give up Kane to save himself. Dante turned back, his expression absolutely merciless. Then we go public. Media, FBI, anyone who'll listen. We make Kane so radioactive that even his uncle can't touch him without getting burned. What about Isabella? If Kane figures out someone's investigating him, he'll escalate. Dante's jaw clenched, which is why we move fast. Tomorrow morning, the tip goes to internal affairs. By afternoon, Webb will be in interrogation. By evening, Kane will be suspended. We don't give him time to think, only time to panic. Victor nodded, already pulling out his phone. I'll make the calls. And Victor. Dante's voice stopped him at the door. Put extra security on Isabella. Kane's going to know something's wrong, and wounded animals are dangerous. The plan executed with military precision. Tuesday morning at 7:32 a.m., Officer Ryan Webb arrived at the 12th District Station to find two internal affairs investigators waiting in the parking lot. Officer Webb, we need to talk about some financial irregularities. By noon, Webb was sitting in an interrogation room, sweating through his uniform as investigators laid out bank records, traffic stop reports, and witness statements. Someone had sent them everything, dates, amounts, patterns that were impossible to deny. Webb lasted 47 minutes before he broke completely. It was Kane's idea, he sobbed, his career disintegrating in real time. He said we deserved the money, that citizens were stupid for breaking laws. He said his uncle would protect us if anything went wrong. The investigators recorded every word. By 3 p.m., Marcus Kane was called into his captain's office. By 4 p.m., he was suspended without pay pending investigation. By 5 p.m., his badge and gun were confiscated, and he was escorted from the building like a common criminal. But Dante wasn't finished. Not even close. At 6 p.m., carefully curated information packages hit 3 major news outlets simultaneously. Financial records with account numbers partially redacted. Photos of Kane meeting with known criminals. Public records of dismissed complaints from multiple women. Everything legal, everything verifiable, everything devastating. By 7 p.m., Kane's face was on every news channel in Chicago. Breaking news: Chicago police officer under investigation for corruption and abuse of power. Sources tell us Officer Marcus Kane made over $40,000 in unexplained cash deposits. Multiple women have come forward with stories of harassment and intimidation by Kane. The city watched a dirty cop's empire crumble in real time, and social media exploded with outrage, demands for accountability, calls for systemic reform. At the Castellano mansion, Isabella stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the television screen showing Marcus's photograph next to the words suspended and under investigation. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God." Catherine appeared beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's happening, honey. He's finally being held accountable." "But how? I didn't report him. I didn't do anything." "How did they?" Isabella's voice broke as understanding dawned. She turned, looking toward Dante's office. "Mr. Castellano, he did this." Catherine squeezed her shoulder. "He protected you. That's what he does." Tears streamed down Isabella's face, not from fear this time, but from something else entirely. Relief so profound it felt like drowning in reverse, like finally being able to breathe after years underwater. Meanwhile, in his apartment across town, Marcus Kane watched his life implode on every screen. His phone exploded with calls, reporters, internal affairs, his uncle screaming about how he'd destroyed the family name, former friends suddenly unable to remember his number. Rage built in his chest like a nuclear reaction. Someone had done this. Someone with resources and reach had systematically destroyed everything he'd built. And Kane knew exactly who to blame. Isabella. She'd gotten this job, gotten close to someone powerful, and now she was using that power against him. She'd betrayed him, humiliated him, taken everything. Kane grabbed his keys with shaking hands. If the system wouldn't protect him anymore, if his badge couldn't save him, then he'd handle this the old way. Isabella would pay for what she'd done. Tonight. He didn't know that 3 blocks away, Victor Santos was watching his apartment through high-powered binoculars, phone already dialing. "Boss, Kane's moving. He just left his place, and judging by his body language, He's headed somewhere with bad intentions. Dante's voice came through cold and certain. Is Isabella still at the mansion? Yes. Catherine's keeping her inside. Good. Let Kane come. Dante's smile was absolutely predatory. We need him to make one final mistake. The kind that even his uncle can't cover up. The kind that guarantees he never wears a badge again. You're using her as bait, Victor said carefully. I'm giving Kane enough rope to hang himself with. There's a difference. Dante's voice hardened. Make sure our people are in position. When Kane shows up here, and he will, I want everything documented. Cameras, witnesses, evidence that's absolutely bulletproof. And if he tries to hurt her, then he learns why you don't threaten what's mine. 40 minutes later, Marcus Kane's car pulled up 2 blocks from the Castellano estate. He sat there in the darkness, staring at the mansion's lit windows, rage burning through every rational thought. Inside, Dante watched the security monitors, Victor beside him, 2 more security personnel positioned strategically throughout the house. He's here, Victor said quietly. I know. Dante's expression was carved from stone. Let's finish this. Kane got out of his car and started walking toward the estate, his hands clenched into fists, his face twisted with fury. He had no badge, no gun, no authority. Just rage and desperation and the absolute certainty that Isabella would pay for destroying him. He didn't see the cameras tracking his every move. Didn't notice the plainclothes security watching from shadows. Didn't realize he was walking into a trap designed specifically for him. Marcus Kane thought he was hunting. He had no idea he was the prey. Marcus Kane made it exactly 17 steps onto Castellano property before everything went wrong for him. He'd scaled the side fence under cover of darkness, avoiding the main gate where cameras obviously watched. His breathing was ragged, hands shaking with adrenaline and rage. All he could think about was Isabella, her face, her betrayal, how she destroyed everything he'd built. He didn't see the motion sensors, didn't notice the infrared cameras tracking his every move, didn't hear the silent alarms triggering throughout the mansion's security system. Inside, Victor's voice cracked through Dante's earpiece. He's on the property, East Lawn, heading toward the service entrance. Let him get closer, Dante said calmly, watching multiple monitor feeds. I want him caught red-handed. Boss, he could reach Isabella before. She's in the panic room with Catherine. 3-inch steel door. He'd need explosives to get through. Dante's voice was ice. Let him come. Kane reached the service entrance and tried the door. Locked. He moved along the building's perimeter, testing windows, looking for any way inside. His face on the security cameras showed pure desperation, eyes wild, jaw clenched, completely unhinged. He's going for the kitchen window, Victor reported. It's slightly open for ventilation. Perfect. Dante stood, straightening his suit jacket. Call the police now. Anonymous tip about an armed intruder on the property. Make sure they send multiple units. Armed. He doesn't have a weapon. Dante's smile was absolutely vicious. He's a suspended cop who's trespassing on private property in the middle of the night. Close enough. Make the call. Kane managed to pry the kitchen window open wider and squeeze through, dropping onto the tile floor with a grunt. He was inside. Finally inside. Now he just needed to find Isabella and make her understand what she'd done, make her pay for it. The lights blazed on, blinding him. When his vision cleared, Dante Castellano stood in the kitchen doorway, flanked by Victor and 2 other security personnel. All of them were calm, controlled, absolutely in command. Marcus Kane, Dante said quietly. You're trespassing. Kane's face flushed red. Where is she? Where's Isabella? Somewhere you'll never reach her. Dante took a step forward. Breaking and entering, Kane. That's a felony. Even for cops. Especially for suspended cops. She destroyed my life. Kane's voice rose to a scream. I gave her everything. Everything. And she betrayed me. She went to you, told you lies about me, and you destroyed me. Isabella didn't say a word about you until I forced her to. Dante's voice was cold as winter. I saw the bruises you left on her wrists. That was enough. Those were accidents. She's clumsy, she. Stop. The single word cut through Kane's protests like a blade. I've seen the surveillance footage of you following her. I've seen the bank records of your corruption. I've read the complaints from other women you terrorized. You're not a victim, Kane. You're a predator who hid behind a badge. Kane lunged forward, rage overriding any remaining sense. Victor and the other security personnel moved instantly, grabbing him, forcing him face first against the kitchen counter. He struggled violently, screaming obscenities, threats, promises of revenge. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Perfect timing, Dante said, checking his watch. Chicago PD should be here in about 90 seconds. Kane's eyes went wide with realization. You called the cops on me? You're a criminal. You think they'll believe you over? I'm a respected businessman whose home was invaded by a suspended police officer with a documented history of violence and stalking. Dante's voice was absolutely calm. My security system recorded everything. Your illegal entry, your threats, your violent behavior. Every second documented in crystal clear HD. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights painted the kitchen walls. You set me up? Kane breathed, finally understanding. This whole thing was a trap. This whole thing was justice. Dante leaned closer, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You thought you could terrorize Isabella because she was alone, because she had no power, because your badge made you untouchable. You were wrong on every count. For police officers burst through the front door, weapons drawn, shouting commands. They found Kane being restrained by Castellano security, Dante standing calmly with his hands visible, and security footage queued up showing Kane's illegal entry. The lead officer, a woman named Detective Sarah Martinez who Dante's people had specifically requested, assessed the situation with sharp, professional eyes. Mr. Castellano, are you injured? No, Detective. My security subdued the intruder before he could cause any damage. Dante gestured to the monitors. Everything is recorded. Breaking and entering, trespassing, terroristic threats. The footage is yours. Marcus Kane was arrested for the second time in a week, this time with charges that couldn't be dismissed or covered up. Breaking and entering a private residence. Trespassing. Violation of an emergency protective order that Dante's lawyers had secured that very afternoon. The cameras caught everything. His illegal entry, his rage, his threats. Evidence so clear that even his uncle couldn't make it disappear. As they led Kane away in handcuffs, he screamed Isabella's name, promising revenge, swearing he'd make her pay. But his threats were empty now. Just the desperate noise of a predator finally caught in a trap of his own making. After the police left, Dante went to the panic room where Isabella waited with Catherine. When the steel door opened and Isabella saw Dante's face, she knew. It's over, he said simply. Kane's arrested. Real charges this time. He's going away for years. Isabella's legs gave out. Dante caught her, helping her to a chair while she sobbed with relief so profound it physically hurt. Catherine knelt beside her, holding her hand, letting her cry out months of accumulated terror. Why? Isabella finally asked through tears. Why did you do all this for me? Dante knelt so they were eye level. Because you work in my house. Because I saw someone hurt you and decided that wasn't acceptable. Because I could help. So I did. 3 weeks later, Marcus Kane stood in court facing 17 criminal charges. His uncle had abandoned him. His lawyer was court-appointed. His former friends pretended they'd never known him. The judge sentenced him to 12 years without parole. As they led him away, Kane looked for Isabella in the courtroom, wanting one last chance to intimidate her. But Isabella wasn't there. She was in her new apartment, the one Dante had arranged, in a secure building with a doorman and 24-hour security. She was sleeping without fear for the first time in years, building a new life that belonged only to her. 6 months later, Isabella stood in Dante's office, dressed professionally, holding a folder. The catering business is doing well, she reported. Dante had provided startup capital after she'd mentioned wanting to cook professionally. 3 new clients this month. Good. Dante nodded approvingly. You're talented. I knew you would succeed. Isabella set down the folder, her voice soft but firm. I came here terrified, broken, convinced I'd never be safe. You gave me more than protection, Mr. Castellano. You gave me my life back. You did that yourself, Dante corrected gently. I just made sure you had the space to do it. After she left, Dante returned to his window, looking out at Chicago. Marcus Kane was in prison. Isabella was free and thriving. Justice had been served in the only way that mattered, completely and permanently. Somewhere in the city, another victim might be suffering. Another predator might be hiding behind authority. But they'd heard the whispers by now, the rumors about what happened to Marcus Kane. how he'd thought himself untouchable and ended up destroyed. The message was clear. Some people, some very dangerous people, protected those under their care with absolute, unforgiving totality. Dante Castellano had sent that message without saying a word, and Chicago would remember it. The shadows had teeth, and they knew how to use them. If this story gave you chills, smash that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Isabella's situation. Share this video with everyone who needs to hear that justice is possible. Hit that like button and turn on notifications because we've got more incredible stories coming that will blow your mind. Don't miss out on stories of courage, justice, and people who refuse to back down. Subscribe today and join our community. Let's get to 100K subscribers together.